Greetings and salutations. Welcome to Knife Chats with Tobias.
Hi everybody, Tobias here, and what I thought I would do today is try and answer one of those questions that a lot of you have asked me, and that question is, how many knives do you actually have in your collection? Now, before I get into that question, let me explain something about my knife collection, and that is, I am not a person who collects a specific pattern of knife, a specific style of knife. I am not a person who collects a knife because I think it has the potential of going up in value or anything like that. I have never looked at collecting knives as a money-making hobby or anything like that. I am also not a person who buys knives to flip them. There's plenty of people who, and by flip, I'm not talking about flippers, I'm talking about buy a knife and resell it for a profit. I'm not that person. I usually buy a knife because it interests me in some way. My purpose for buying a knife is, a lot of it has to do with the history behind the pattern, the history behind the company, and things of this nature. I look at the knife more for its place in history. And that is why you see knives, a lot of the knives I have are not necessarily extremely expensive knives or anything of that nature. They're knives that had a historical importance in the fact that it was a knife that was popular, or it was a knife that sold well, or it was a knife that was associated with a group or something like that. So that's why you see a lot of military knives in my collection. That's also why I've got a lot of Cub Scout and Boy Scout knives and things of that nature, because Cub Scout knives, Boy Scout knives, there's a history behind those knives, and the same thing with military knives. But also there's a history behind a variety of traditional slip joints and even some modern folders and stuff of that nature. So that's really where my collection has grown and where it came from. I used to do a lot of fishing, so I also have a lot of knives that were associated with fishing and stuff. So got a lot of other stuff too that is related to fishing, old lures and tackle equipment and stuff like that. So that's where my collection grew from. Well, as for the amount of knives in the collection, what I did was to get the count, I started here at the workbench. I counted what was on the workbench because I thought, all right, I've tried to do this a couple times in the past, and what has happened is I've gone in, started looking at things, and it's like, oh, this is out of place, and I've moved it. And then once you start moving things around while counting, your count gets all screwed up. So what I did is I convinced myself not to move anything until I finished counting. And I started at the workbench, I counted what was on the workbench, and then I started on this wall, covered it, went over to the next wall, started counting everything on that, and then I started going through the drawers, and then I went back to some of the walls and everything else, went back into the Volcano Club, counted what was over in the Volcano Club that Skip had stolen from me and everything else. So the collection also includes the stuff that is over in the Volcano Club, and then I went and counted everything that I had in boxes and everything else, and then I thought I had counted everything up, and I tallied all those numbers up, and the total came out to 1,662. Now, since doing that count, this knife showed up. So do I say now 1,663? And then also this knife showed up. This is what did they call it? The Ghost Fish. This is the latest Rough Rider Reserve. This one just showed up today. I counted 3 days ago. Now we're 1,664. And there's another knife that showed up today, 1,665. You know, as you can see, it's hard for me to keep a count accurate, but I'm just going to go with the 1662 for the sake of this video, because even after doing that, I then went through and took photos of everything. So you're going to see a slideshow after this. And when I was doing the slideshow or taking all the photos, it's like, wait a minute, where's this knife? Because there are knives that as I was taking the photos, I was like, hey, this knife isn't here. Where is this? And it's because I have a steamer trunk that also has a bunch of knives in it. I did not count the stuff in there. And then I also have a couple drawers where I have a bunch of knives that are just tossed into the drawer, and they're not really part of the collection. But what had happened is some of the knives that would have been in the ended up in these other locations, so they kind of got misfiled or mislaid, you could say. So even today, the 1662 number is more or less a ballpark number, but at least I have a working number to go by. 1662. I don't know if anything important happened on that date or not. Something I'll have to look into. In any case, also, when you see the slideshow, there are going to be knives that you look at and they're going to be head scratchers. You're going to look at it and go, why in the world is this knife part of his collection? And it's because, I'm a little eclectic when it comes to collecting, and I look at it as I'm interested in the entire history of knife collecting, as well as knife making and everything else. So there are people who collect knives who really, what they focus on are fantasy knives. Other people and look at that fantasy knife and they think of it as mall ninja stuff and garbage, so they don't want those knives. Same thing with the truck stop commando knives and stuff like that. But for me, those knives are part of the history of knives, so they make it into my collection, right up there with the $100, $200 knives that are USA made, and people really are looking forward to having in their collection. And that's the other thing. I know some people are going to look at this collection and go, well, that's a bunch of foreign crap. I don't want any foreign crap. I only want American-made knives. Well, that's not me. I collect knives from everywhere, and quite frankly, there are some knives in my collection that are USA-made knives from the 1930s, 1950s, 1960s that they were budget knives when they came out, very much budget knives, and a lot of them people look at today and they're actually actively seeking them out. I can think of Camp King knives that have the shell handles, and same thing with like the old Forest Masters and things like that. These were USA made knives, but they're definitely not what you would say a quality, well-made knife. However, these really low-budget knives from that time period have stood the test of time, and they're holding up well. But now those knives, instead of being made in the USA, or at one time they ended up being made in Germany, or they ended up being made in Japan, or they end up now being made in China or Pakistan, and that is part of the history of knives, even here in America. So for me, all of that is something that fits into my collection. So in any case, the magic number came out to be 1662. And so if you stick around, you'll see about 95 to 97% of my knife collection. There were a few knives that missed the slideshow, but most of them are there, and obviously there's a few knives in the slideshow that probably will not remain in the collection. But in any case, stick around. Here's the slides.
Let me take just a second to thank you once again for dropping by and spending a few minutes here at Knife Chats with Tobias. I really do appreciate it, and I do appreciate any comments that you leave. So please remember to give me that thumbs up, and also don't forget to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you'll know when the next episode is up and running. Thanks again for dropping by. Really do appreciate your time here.